What's up, what's up, what's up, y'all? Welcome back to the highway with Kyle Shutt. I am up so early, tackling life, doing the damn thing. I hope you're all doing the same thing. I got such a special guest this week. Another name you might not know, but that you should. Mr. Dave Crooks. He's a video game developer that works for a company called Dodge Roll. And we're going to talk about all things video games this week. I am so excited. So much more goes into making a video game than people realize, and we're going to get to the damn bottom of it. As always, if you like what you're hearing on this show, ring that little bell, click that little button, flip somebody the bird. I don't really care, but all of it helps out this show, especially flipping people off. And if you want to go one step further and throw a few dollars in my proverbial hat, you can find us at patreon.com/thehighway. For a few scant dollars a month, you can help me keep the lights on. Even get yourself a shout out on the program. Get early access to next week's episode. Help me put a 6-pack of beer in the fridge. We got all kinds of shout out. We got Gary LaRoe. Thank you. My boy Bert Davis. Matt Bursky. Guy Woodsell. Adam Johnson. My girl Nika Rogers. Lil Master P. And we even got a new guy in the mix. Kevin the Dude Guy. I love it. I love you all so much. And I also have endless love for our sponsors, Heil Sound. Because if you like the way I sound, it's because there's a Heil in front of me. That is enough with the chit-chat. I'm ready to talk about video games. Let's do things my way, baby.
The Highway.
Hey, buddy, what's up?
Hey, man. Not much. How are you?
Life in the afterworld, as I like to call it.
Yeah, the mid-apocalypse.
Yeah, I like it. It's still the early stages of the apocalypse because
Yeah.
people are still getting fat.
Yeah.
We haven't really hit full stage famine yet.
Yeah.
But Dave Crooks, everybody, the co-creator of Enter the Gungeon and Exit the Gungeon, phenomenal, brutally difficult video games. Thanks so much for coming on, man. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. I know video games have been a huge part of pop culture and everything the last 40 years almost, but it's still, I mean, to me at least, it's still kind of like a mysterious art of the creation of video games, and video game developers and studios and things like that are very much, I believe, the rock stars kind of our age, because don't get me wrong, I love rock and roll, but it's certainly not like the years of decadence that it used to be or anything like that. Not that game developers are nearly as wild as crazy rock stars used to be, but we'll get into that. I was just hoping you could. I'd love to ask you about just how you got into game development and what games sort of led you down that path of wanting to do that.
Sure. Well, I was pretty much ever since I can remember, I wanted to make video games. I went to a daycare because my parents worked full time, and they got a Nintendo Entertainment System basically right when it came out, and as soon as they had that, no kid there wanted to do anything else, obviously.
I can relate.
Yeah, so pretty much from the jump, from the NES, kind of consumed me, and then I played everything I could, but it was 1998, I think, when Metal Gear Solid 1 came out, that I kind of played it in one sitting and was like, oh my god, video games, they're toys, but they're also art. And I was like, I have to be part of this. So I kind of I was in middle school at the time, and I kind of adjusted my idea of the future of my life to hopefully map onto making video games, and I decided to go down the art path, basically, and I was hoping to do 3D animation. So I ended up going to an art college, and after doing that for a couple years, I got really disenfranchised with the entire endeavor, and decided to study film, but as literature. So not actually going and filming things, but if you were an English major and you read a book, and then you write about the book. Like that's what I would do for film, you know. And
Writing books about movies.
yeah,
I love it.
and so basically
It's like writing songs about music.
but yeah, so I kind of totally like went the other direction, and right when I graduated college, I was killing time before. Well, I had applied to go take a job in Japan, but I wasn't supposed to leave for 6 months, so I was like, well, I'll take a class on game design at the college, you know, just to kill time because I had 6 months. And the teacher ended up being a producer at BioWare, and as soon as I figured that out, I just like got up in her shit and was like, please give me a job, please give me a job. So I got a job updating like BioWare Mythic's Facebook page. And
I was gonna say, what was like, the what were they working on at that time?
they were transitioning. Well, they were working on a bunch of like older. They were like maintaining a bunch of older MMOs, like Warhammer Online,
Okay.
Dark Age of Camelot, Ultima Online, and I came in sort of as those products had already been out for ranging from a few years to a number of years in the case of Ultima Online, and I was basically like helping with the website and doing Twitter and every day. Oh, and then they had just started working on a spin-off to Warhammer Online called Wrath of Heroes. And then they were working on Ultima Forever. They were sort of like pivoting to being like a more free-to-play studio because they were owned by EA. And and so I was doing Facebook stuff, and then the way that I kind of got into actually being on the game team was being extremely same way that I got the job, being belligerent, going over to the game team, being like, got any crap work you don't want to do? You want to have me do for you? And I just did that all the time. And then eventually when a slot on the game team opened up, they were like, I'm assuming this is what they said. They were just like, why don't we just get that guy who's always in our, in our shit, like to come over. He already knows how to use the tools, And so then I got moved over, and it was great. And yeah, so that's how I got into it. And then not too long after that, a couple years after that, EA killed Mythic, made them fall on their sword, and it was right at that point that I gathered my favorite people at the studio, and like we formed our own little studio, and that's when we started working on Gungeon.
Man, that's wild. Like you hear stories about record labels and stuff folding or this or that and everything, but like the way that video games are made, this is just from my outside perception, it's just like they these huge companies need this game cranked out like super fast relatively, because it takes years and years to make a game, and then like you have these companies just hire on like whole departments of people just to make this one game, and the second it comes out they just crush everyone.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It's just that's it. I've heard so many stories about that. That's just crazy to me that they can just keep doing that over time.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely a thing in the industry. There are studios that are like known to be better about it. There's publishing houses that are known to be worse about it, but it basically you keep bringing people on to get it done, and then when it's done, you don't need as many people working on it because like the overlapping disciplines. To make a video game, there's so many different roles that like by the end of the game. By the end of the development, everyone is kind of firing on all cylinders, and if you release the game and then you're like, okay, let's make a new one, like 90% of the team has nothing to do until the first 10% of the team gets their shit in order to be ready for everyone else to start working in a real way on the next game. And so even if things go well, like the game comes out and does well, you still see a lot of people get let go because they're just like, well, we have like 8 months of pre-production to do that you won't have any part of, and on the other hand, there's people leaving voluntarily because the game industry is definitely a meat grinder, and so they're after the game comes out, they're like, ugh, I'm moving to Canada and I'm just gonna live in the Yukon you know, and like bury myself in the snow for a year, and then I'll come back and I'll do it again, you know.
I've definitely felt that way after like crazy, you know, like a 3-year tour cycle where I was like, okay, I'm just gonna go to the Caribbean for a while, like just
Yeah.
I'll call you when I'm done. But my God, dude, I just it still like fascinates me what a team like that can all do together. Because like, you know, you play one game. I'm just well, I know one of our mutual favorites is Dark Souls.
Yeah.
Like a game like that just is so sprawling and has so many elements and has to work so quickly and everything like that. It's just it's insane to me. Does From Software have the same kind of setup where there's just like hundreds of people working on getting this game together? I just wonder like how difficult it is to get that many people to do their job and for it all to fit together correctly.
Well, From Software is kind of, they're not the only people that get stuff out at the pace they do, but they are kind of an anomaly in that how fast they build the size of games they do. And part of it is because and some of this is me extrapolating from like various pieces of data I have, and some of it is things I've been told explicitly. But I mean, From Software is an old company. They've been making games forever, and the people who were making the games at the beginning of From Software are still there making games. Usually, you know, people have left, but like a lot of the main creative forces are still there, and so they just really know how to make a game pretty fast. And they, because of Dark Souls' success, they have a lot of money. So yes, they have hundreds of people working there to just, you know, churn things out, and it takes a couple of, you know, they're getting their games out in like 2 to 3 year dev cycles. Apparently the new one that's coming out, Elden Ring, is taking a little bit longer. But if you look at the cadence of Dark Souls, Demon Souls to Dark Souls 1 to Dark Souls 2 to Dark Souls 3, it's like there's 2 years in between each one of those. And they also had Bloodborne and Sekiro come out.
Yeah, that's just nuts, man. And also the Elden Ring, the new one that they're working on, it's in conjunction. It's like a collaborative effort with George R. R. Martin. That's right?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So that I could see why that would end up taking way longer
Yeah.
than a normal game of theirs.
Yeah.
But still, they're a world-class developer. I love all their games. I haven't played Sekiro yet, but one day I will work up the nerve to tackle that one. I mean, Dark Souls is hard. Don't get me wrong. But yeah, I think it was you that told me Sekiro. Like, there is no alternate strategy.
Yeah.
You just have to be excellent to continue. And I don't know if I'm ready for that yet. I hardly have any time to game anymore. It's one of my huge passions in life. But I don't know. You get older, you have some kids and stuff like that. It kind of gets in the way. But I still try to carve out some time. I'm actually replaying Dark Souls right now.
Nice.
I had never played as a faith build, so I wanted to create a cleric knight. And right now in my current journey, I am cursed, and I am I'm a fool because I accidentally attacked the Moss Woman merchant who sells purging stones.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm having to fight through the New Londo ruins with half stats in an attempt to find the healer. So yay! I make great decisions.
I want to say if you buy the sin absolving thing from the guy at the top of the tower after the gargoyles.
In the bell tower, yeah.
I think that works for unpissing off the NPCs, but
it does, but it's 500 souls a level, and I'm at like level 43 right now.
I see.
And yeah I don't really feel like grinding out 20,000 souls to waste on that. So I think I can get through it. I don't have any commitment problems at all. So it's also too late to start a new game. So I'm just like, fuck it, I can do it.
Well, cool.
But yeah, with me starting games, I was sort of born into a family with some older cousins that had an Atari 2600S, and so I grew up playing, hide and peek, and I think we had like the ET game. It was just like the notoriously the worst game of all time.
Oh yeah.
But and I love that. And then we got an NES. I think I was like 6 maybe. Around then, 6 or 7, and I remember.
Yeah, that makes sense.
One of the first games I got for it was the Chip and Dale's Rescue Rangers game, which was like so fun. I loved that cartoon and I loved that game. Video games back then were hard. They're a lot harder, I think, than people give them credit for. They think like, they might be archaic technology, so they think the games would be easy, but it's actually quite the opposite. It was really, really difficult. Some of those early games. What were some of your favorite just first wave Nintendo games?
Well, I mean, the first game I think that I ever played was Super Mario, and so that definitely holds like this, place of like, if not one of my favorites, it's certainly like the cornerstone. Like I remember it very, very
absolutely.
deeply. But other than that, at that time I was super into like all the Mega Man games.
Oh god, dude.
Yeah, so Mega Man.
I've still never beat Mega Man 2. That pisses me off. That's the only one I can't get past the Dr. Wily's castle. Unfortunately.
It's super hard. I mean, I've played it like every few years since then, basically, and I definitely have gotten worse. Like when I was a kid, I had nothing to do, so I would just throw all my energy into mastering it. And at the time, every game basically killed you, and that was it. You had to start over because it was all coming.
Right.
It was all the design
Totally.
was coming from like arcade games. So it was like meant to be hard, so that you had to like spend more time with it, therefore more money. And so like all this design is like getting ported over from the design of arcade games onto the NES. You didn't have to put any more money into it, but it was still very difficult. And yeah, but then as I got older, I just like, and then you're playing easier games because games, as you said, like generally get easier. So you like try to pick up Mega Man 2 now, and it's just like, man, not only is it harder, but like it feels so much harder because like everything else that I play is, so forgiving.
I'm trying to think of another one.
In comparison.
Yeah, Battletoads was another one.
Oh yeah.
The Battletoads game was goddamn impossible. I can't even. I don't think I beat it. There were very few NES games that I actually took to completion. I did beat Metroid. I know that I did beat Castlevania, but that might be it.
Yeah, I think I did beat Mega Man 2, but that might be the only Mega Man that I've beaten. I think I've beaten Mario 1 and 3. Yeah, and I don't really remember too many others.
I don't think I beat 2. I did beat 3. I do remember that now, but I don't think I beat 1 or 2.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, like there was you get frustrated after a certain point when you're at that age and you're like, I gotta play this whole game again. Ugh, no. But that's why I like Dark Souls so much. It's because it's like that. It's like if you go far enough down a level and you die, you're fucked, man. Like, like to get your souls back, you got to start at that bonfire again and go all the way, and it can be discouraging. But I don't know. I appreciated the challenge when it came out. What can I say? But another thing that I do love console games, but my dad actually he had an early PC. I don't know exactly what PC it was, but he had gotten a couple of games for it. This would have been when I was around 7, 8 years old, something like that. He had the Zork games.
Oh yeah.
That were just, I don't know if people know this, but Zork was a text-based game where you just wake up. I can't remember the first thing, but it's like you wake up in a dark room, and then you type in like feel around on the floor, and it's like you feel flint to make a fire, and then you build, like strike the flint, build a fire, and then you see somebody sitting in the corner now that there's light in the room, and then so you just type and go all along. I used to sit in my room and draw out these maps of all these games and everything, just because, like, I don't know, like, to me that was just fascinating to play a game with no graphics. It seems kind of laughable now, but I haven't really seen another game attempt to do something like that was actually good. That didn't make it seem like a choose your own adventure game. It was almost like borderline D&D, like a next level D&D kind of thing. But did you ever mess with any Zork games?
Yeah,
anything like that?
Yeah, I did actually. I definitely played the first Zork. I think I've played a number of the Zorks afterwards, even after they did get graphics. But yeah,
I did play those too, the Nemesis and Zork 3 and all that. Yeah, or Zork 5, I think, Grand Inquisitor, whichever one that was. Yeah, those were hilarious.
Yeah,
I love those games.
But yeah, there's not too many like. I mean, every once in a while, especially in indie games, you'll see some people come out with like text adventure style games. Actually, like last year, there was this kind of interesting thing where this guy basically made an AI like text adventure game where like instead of having a preset like list of things depending on wherever you were in the game, it like generated stuff for you, so you could really type like whatever you wanted, and it would, you could be like, it would be like a dragon like lands in front of you, like what do you do? And you could be like, I cut off the dragon's head and I use it and I drink its blood, and it would react, and it's like you pour the blood down your throat and feel the it gives you indigestion or whatever. It would react, and it's all because it was like AI based. But like if you keep pushing at the edges, it like you could kind of see the limits of the technology. But I mean, in a few years, like we're gonna have the best text adventure games of all time.
Sign me up, dude! I am so down. Oh my god, that's incredible. Wow. But this I know we're getting off on a video game right here. I could talk about games all day, but when you pair music to a game, it's been really crazy to see the evolution of video game music, and it's sort of rise in popularity and sort of fall. It's not really like it came in waves like the music industry did. It was just like it's just been implemented in so many different ways. You started with like the chiptune stuff that was just programmed sort of as an afterthought to a lot of the earlier games, and then up into obviously whenever Guitar Hero happened, it was at first it was just one guy making his own versions of all these songs that they could build into the game. And then eventually they had, were able to actually get stems of the recordings from these bands and put the real music into these games and stuff, which was huge for bands like Sword and other bands that didn't necessarily have any hits on the radio or anything like that. There was also, of course, the Tony Hawk games that had just legendary soundtracks, and was like a huge way of a lot of bands getting exposure that they wouldn't have gotten from something like MTV or, like I said, the radio or anything like that. Right. But I think video game companies realized that having to pay these artists the mechanical royalties for using their music over time, it just wasn't. It didn't make the video game as lucrative as it could have been, and so I feel like that bubble kind of burst, especially with like the Rock Band and Guitar Hero games. But also, a lot of video games, they don't really have the time to dedicate or the budget to dedicate to a person to make music like full time, like a studio. They were just like, and it's kind of like, it's, even though it's like this much time has progressed, music in video games still kind of seems like an afterthought. Do you think that's a fair statement, or is it? Is there something I don't know that's going on?
Well, there's a lot there, but I think that I mean, there's so much. I think that you're right in general. It probably. I mean, in the games industry, there's kind of a joke that like sound at all is like kind of an afterthought, which is like.
Well, just because I not to insult it, I just mean like as like you build the whole game and then you're like, shit, we need music, go, we need music fast. That's kind of what I meant. As
there's like. I mean, there are lots of studios out there. I mean, like, if you look at something like Nintendo, it's like they build musical things into everything they do. Like, it's extremely in the forefront of their design. Like, all the sound effects are, like, playing in with the music. I mean, even though they wrote all the music, like, 25 years ago, and, like, it's basically the same, and they're just remixing it at this point. But, like, it was really good music, And, like, any reasonably sized studio is going to have like in-house composers, or they probably have the money to pay someone to compose like original music for them. But like on certainly on the indie side of things, it's like you kind of you have to take what you can get, what you can afford. Sometimes you can pay someone in royalties, so if they, like, you just say, like, no, the game's going to do well, we promise, and we'll give you a percentage if you'll make some music for us. But, yeah, it's tough. I mean, because the thing is, like, music is extremely special. I mean, like, I'm a game designer, and I know a little bit about programming and a little bit about animation, and a little bit about texturing and a little bit about 3D, and, and I know a little bit about everything that goes into making a game, but I don't know shit about music, so it's very hard to like appreciate and assign like tangible value to something that you fundamentally don't understand. It's like there are songs that I like.
That's a really, really good point. Yeah, totally.
And I think that that's the case with like a lot of people who are in a position to make decisions about like the budget and hiring and everything regarding music in a game. But there is still like a lot of really like a lot of studios out there like do care and do pay attention. But I do think that you are right.
That's just like really, really good points you brought up. Because like the soundtrack for Enter the Gungeon is done by Dose One, who is he worked with Peeping Tom doing like stuff like that. He's got obviously his own career going on, and he delivered this insane soundtrack for y'all that like totally encompasses like the tongue in cheek sort of like pun feel that game has. Where I don't know if anybody's out there has played it or not, but it's about a world where they're trying to find a gun that can kill the past. Because they don't like the way that the world is now, and or this tragedy that happened, and it's told through just about a million gun puns, and out of the music, it was like super lighthearted, and I felt like really atypical of your average video game music. So I really loved y'all's attention to detail in that point. Yeah, it was just a great video game soundtrack. And what was that a thing where you just kind of like gave him the game and was like, "Here's the whole game, make music for us"?
So actually, Dose One was brought in on the project really, really early. Actually, before we even started working. Actually, because I had met him at GDC. He was performing some music that he had done for the Samurai Gun at like a Giant Bombcast, which is it's a podcast from Giant Bomb, and he was performing it, and I was sort of like off camera, just kind of drinking a beer, and I had a moment where I was like, I realized that I was a fan of this person from listening to his music, years before, and I had been talking to him for 10 minutes, and I was like, hey, do you want to do the music for this game we're probably going to make soon? And he was just like, sure. It like didn't even question it. And I was like, okay, awesome.
Yes.
And then when
story's over, that was it.
Yeah.
That was the fastest story ever.
Well, then when Mythic ended up crumbling and we were kind of ready to go to start our own studio, like the next day I emailed him and I was like, hey, so looks like we are going to make that game. You still want to do the music? And he was just like, yep, let's do it. And so he was sort of on board from the beginning, but he was just like out there. He was playing the game, playing the builds, and just kind of working. And he would send us music, and we'd be like, great. And then, we give him some feedback. But for the most part, we just let him do his thing. Because, one thing I learned over the course of developing Gungeon and having to hire a bunch of artists to do various things for us, like promotional art and other things, is like, you don't want to stretch an artist too much, like you get somebody who is going to you think is going to deliver you within their, like, what they like to do. Because like if you try to hire like a cartoonist to draw something super realistic, it's not going to work out for you, So right, I knew that he did this very particular like stylized like vocal percussive beats, and I was like, that is very different from what you hear in a lot of pixel art games. And I love chiptune music, but I was just like, it's something different and I like it, so let's go with that because I have no better idea. As I said, I don't know much about music. And he worked his ass off and delivered like 60 song soundtrack, which is bananas.
It's a lot. That's like 6 albums worth of material. I mean, it's a lot of music to create for a video game, especially something that honestly somebody might mute and play their own music to, or something, which is heartbreaking to hear as a musician. But I've definitely done it before. what was I gonna say? Where was I? Oh yeah, back in the day, I was gonna say like CD or record labels used to put out records. Like I remember seeing this sticker on like Jackal CDs and like a couple other, I can't remember exactly who, but there was a sticker on it that like Sega must have paid for or something that would say like, this CD would go great while you're playing your Sega games. You know what I mean? And things like that. I thought that was crazy to see that. When it comes to video game development and putting that team together and stuff, I couldn't help but notice that it's very much like the music industry, and that you're a band and your album is your game. And then to get that game out, you could put it out DIY or you know, however you want to look at that. But also there is a record label sort of aspect in the publisher. I mean, is that correct in thinking that sort of relationship kind of tier goes the same way? Because your publisher is the one that's going to get it out to stores and get you distribution and things like that, kind of like a record label would.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think the comparison is, there's probably few better comparisons like between industries. It's exactly like that, and it especially on an indie game, you know, in an indie team where, you know, we're a 4-man team plus Dos One and our sound designer, but it was 4 of us like in my room or in my living room, you know, for 2 years, just working every day for 12 hours and, you know, all of the like interpersonal, you know, like friction that comes with that I can imagine might, you know, come forth should you be, say, in the back of a van driving around.
12 hours a day, yeah.
Yeah, and then, yeah, so like when it comes time to like, okay, we're making the game, but like how do we get it noticed? How do we get it like promoted? All that stuff. Like that's not our expertise, and more importantly, we're not really interested in like doing it all ourselves. You know, obviously we want input, so that's where like having a publisher comes in. And so we like pitched the game to a few different publishers, but we went with Devolver Digital, and so they gave us some money for marketing and development, and then like they handled sort of the marketing structure, and they like negotiate deals with distribution platforms and various things like that on our behalf, and then they take their cut, you know. And I love Devolver Digital. They've been incredibly good to us, and we're personal friends with them, so it worked out really well for us. But there are like sort of similar sounding horror stories in the games industry, particularly the indie games industry, with their publishers that I mean, it sounds just like reading something went terribly wrong with a band's label, so it seems like pretty much the same sort of thing.
Yeah, that's really crazy to think about. Just, I mean, just like any band, there's a million bands out there, but only like a few are going to rise to the top. Only if there's, for as many people that it takes to make a video game and for as much money as it takes and everything, there are so many games. It's crazy. And it's almost, I see a lot of parallels in the film industry too, where like being in a band is really like instantly satisfying, because like you get to play your songs in a room. Well, we used to anyway. Let's think about the past for a minute. We, you know, play your songs in a room full of people, anywhere between 100 or 1,000 or however many people, and they're all going nuts and they're all in your face screaming and you're having a great time and stuff like that. But when you're making a movie, you know, there's no people in your face screaming. There's no, you know, just kind of like just intense, like intensity, you know, but between a core group of people just like making this crazy noise that's like bigger than the sum of its parts. And there's, you know, when you're making a movie, there's all these moving parts and you're kind of filming and it's real quiet and everyone is kind of like has a different idea of what it should be. And then, you know, years goes by between the editing and this and that, and then by the time it finally gets distributed and the movie's released, and then it might suck. Like maybe you spent like 4 years making a movie and it totally sucks, you know, and like there's nothing, it could be worse than that. But like with video games too, it almost seems like you just, because you never know what's going to get hot, you spend years making this thing, and then I don't know, like, but maybe as you go along you might realize that it sucks. I don't know, because at least you can play a game. Like with a movie, you don't really get to see a movie until it's done, you know what I mean?
Right, yeah. No, I remember, like, I read a lot of, like, film blogs and stuff, and I'm always fascinated when I read an interview with, like, some actor, and they're like, oh, I haven't seen it yet, but it's, like, coming out in a day, it's just, like,
Right. Yeah.
on the one hand, I completely understand that, because, like, if I was doing an interview on camera, like, I would never watch it, but on the other hand, like, they're a professional actor, so it feels like they should be more used to being on camera. Maybe they just don't care. They're just like, my craft is the thing that I did. Like, I'm not here as a consumer, But
and there's no changing it too. It's not
Yeah.
like they can. You can critique your performance all you want, but at the end of the day, there's still a cinematographer, there's still a director, there's still an editor that are all like manipulating that performance. So just because a movie sucks, it might not be the actor's fault.
yeah, and I mean,
necessarily.
and both games and movies, like, at least larger games, like, there's so many people working on it. I think that because I've worked on a larger team before as well, and I think you definitely do know. Like, the development team always knows how good the game is before it comes out, Now, they may not fully align with the reviews, and sometimes games get robbed for various reasons, but, like, usually what you hear from a studio before a game comes out is entirely dictated by, like, the marketing team. Like, you're not hearing the people, like, the environment artist, who's, like, working every day making the shrubs look good, and he knows intrinsically how good the game is, and, like, he's not tweeting about it because he'll get fired, so like so they know for sure, but yeah, you don't get the gratification until the end of it. To me, like, I've said this to a lot of people who've, like, asked me about, like, getting into the video game industry, and I'm just like, and they're like, should I go AAA? Should I try to start my own thing? And I'm just like, I would say go AAA until you can't stand it anymore, and then maybe try your own thing. Because the only people who make it as, like, mentally as, like, on the smaller teams are people who, like, cannot function as human beings without making a video game, because that's the type of toll it takes on your life. Whereas, like, at least if you work for a AAA company, even if, like, you might be less emotionally invested in what you're making, at least you can leave at any time, and just be happy with the, like, little slice of it that you did, whereas, like, if you're working on, like, a game for 2 years with, like, 4 people, it's extremely hard not to, at the end of it, be incredibly personally attached to, like, the words people use to describe it. So, and it's like, after 2 years, like, that would be so painful if it went horribly wrong, I can tell you,
Same as making a record.
Yeah.
I mean, I try as hard as I can not to read record reviews of recordings that I've been a part of, because it's just you can't dictate how someone is going to take that art. You know what I mean? It's because it's not yours anymore. It's not your album. It belongs to the world. Brent, who also works with Dodrel, who also helped create Enter the Gungeon, for those out there that don't know, mutual friend of ours. He told me this metaphor in a way that I thought was just, or maybe it's an analogy. I apologize. He said that a video game is like, you build this car, and you sell this car, and it's one car. You built one car, and you sell it to this one person, and they take it home, and then they call you and say, "Hey, what's up? Yeah, I really, really like this car that I bought from you, but how do you put gas in it?" And then Brent was like, "Well, you just open the gas cap and put the gas in." And then the person's like, "Well, I can't get the gas cap open because it's parked right next to a wall. Like, so how do I get gas in the tank?" And you're like, why is the car next to a wall? He's like, "Well, I put the car on, each tire is on a different treadmill, and I put a cinder block on the gas, and I run that car to spin those treadmills to charge the batteries that power my house, and the car ran out of gas, and so I can't charge the batteries for my house, and so now I need to put gas in the car, and I can't get the gas cap open because it's parked next to a wall. So how do I get gas in the car?" And that was like the perfect, like, way to describe, like, building, like, coding a game to be played a certain way, but then you have no idea how these people are going to play the game once it is released. I've seen people play Tony Hawk games that are just like, how did you make the game do that? What the hell are you doing, man? And things like that. So it's just, it must be like triple infuriating to read these like reviews from people that are just, you have no idea how they even approached playing the game. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean the guy Derek Yu, the guy who made Spelunky, like I think he put it really well. He was like, the player is an agent of chaos. Like, you can do your best to define rules for them, but at the end of the day, like, it's their party. And I think that it's when you play, like, when you read reviews and stuff, it's just like, what? You know, I mean, like, how would you review a puzzle game? You know, like, unbiasedly. Like, it's like, well, I didn't enjoy not knowing the answer to the puzzle, and there were 10 puzzles in the game, and I solved them all, but I spent 90% of the time for each puzzle not knowing, and then it was only in the last 10% of each puzzle that I knew. So therefore, it's a 1 out of 10 because I was upset 90% of the time. It's like, well, fuck you, man. Like, I mean, that's like, I haven't read a review that bad, but like I've read a bunch that come really close, you know. So. Yeah.
I get it when a game is like bugged out like crazy. Like whenever Skyrim came out, don't get me wrong, I fucking love Skyrim. I got the platinum trophy that game. But like, it was an insanely frustrating experience when it came out, and it still got Game of the Year. How do things like that happen? I mean, it's like, can you just buy like awards? You know what I mean? Is that a thing that happens that we're not allowed to talk about? You know,
not that I know of. No, I mean, a lot of it's zeitgeist, I feel like. You know, like, what are people talking about? What lit up Twitter? But in the case of Skyrim, I mean, Bethesda's kind of always gotten away with a little bit jankiness for, you know, because no one is really making games that had the kind of sprawling, do whatever you want-ness, you know, quite as well as they do. You know, like, they're not the most polished games in the world, but they're definitely more polished than anything that looks like them, especially at the time that Skyrim came out, you know?
That's very true.
You know, now we have, like, CD Projekt Red, like, having done a couple of games that I would say, like, are eating their lunch, and even the guys who made, you know, the original Fallouts, like, back in the original turn-based Fallouts, like, they made... With Obsidian, they made the Outer Worlds, and that's like, you know, it's Fallout in space, but it's very much a Bethesda-style game, and it's like, they're kind of doing it better than Bethesda, so, yeah, I don't really know, like, every year I watch the Game Awards, you know, and I'm like, which is like our version of the Oscars, and I'm like, okay, like, I guess I don't, it's very hard for me to decouple like my thoughts like as a developer. So video games have an award that is given to the games by developers, and it's the DICE Awards, and as far as I'm concerned, those are the only ones that matter. It's hard for me to like really unbiasedly like, or like even talk about like the video game awards like that they show on TV. It's like, it feels very commercial to me, like literally like it's a commercial, like selling me the next one, which like,
yeah, that's like what the Grammys are. It's all fixed.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't really feel like I answered your question, but I basically started thinking about the Game Awards.
It wasn't much of a question anyway. You know, it's fine.
And I just started getting upset at them, and then I kind of rambled. Yeah. That's how I feel about the Game Awards. They make me upset kind of incoherently. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because like especially with games like I think it was when Demon Souls came out, as the predecessor to Dark Souls. It almost, something clicked in my brain around the time I think Grand Theft Auto Vice City came out. Like, I don't know what made me think this, but before that, I always thought about video games are just, they're like you said, they're just toys, but they move and you play them and they're art and it's fun and stuff like that. But I never really thought about it just boiling down to me versus the developer. And whenever Demon Souls came out and it was touted as like the most difficult game of all time and you'll never, get past the first level and this and that, I was like, Fuck that. I just remember thinking, like, it's just a developer. Like, I'm not going to let some video game developer tell me that I can't play a game. Fuck that shit. So that's why I went out and bought it. It was almost out of spite. And I was like, how hard could this game be? And I ran up, the bridge at the beginning of the game, and just the first undead enemy just like had a broken sword hilt, just like boom, killed me dead. And I was like, Jesus Christ, man, like what?
Yeah.
What was that? And so I respawned and like went back, tried to get him again, boom, killed me again. I was like, no. That's ridiculous. And like, yeah, I mean, I think honestly it took me like half an hour to really calm down and just have a little patience. I was used to games like, God of War and Grand Theft Auto, where you just like, tear through a level. And that was the first time I had played a game that really required patience and finesse. And then I discovered that their control system was actually like allowed you more freedom than just about any other combat game I had ever played, and that's kind of like how I ended up falling in love with the series and followed it throughout all of its iterations and stuff. But yeah, do you think about that while you're developing a game? Like you're like, oh fuck this player, oh I'm gonna get him good, or do you take a more wider approach and try to like make a piece of art that's fun and entertaining and things like that? Because your games are punishingly difficult.
Well, I would say it's a mix. I mean, like, I'm definitely constantly thinking about what the player will think as they approach any situation. Like, with games, there's so many things happening on the screen at once. A lot of times, you have to spend a lot of time really, like, making sure it's all readable, and, like, you kind of have to get into the players. That's why playtesting is so important. You have to, like, understand, like, you might think that this sort of scenario is going to make the player do it this thing and react this way, but then you play test it, you watch somebody play, and like they, as you say, like they drive the car up next to the wall on 4 treadmills, and you're just like, what the fuck is happening? Like, no. and then you go back and you're like, I don't even understand humanity anymore. I can't do my job, but then you have a beer and you wake up the next day and you start to think about it again. But like, so sometimes, yeah, I mean, when you're playing, if designing a boss and the difficulty in his attacks, like sometimes it'll be like, I know that this attack is going to make the player like move in this way, and so I'll just make the next attack like surprise him and like hit him in this way. And so there's absolutely that sort of thing. And like and just on the other hand, sometimes it's just for fun. Like there's an achievement in Gungeon called I Knew Someone Would Do It, and you get it for pushing like 10 tables into the pits, because you can flip over a table in the game and you can push them around and there's these pits, and like I knew that like people would just like flip them over. Like the tables cannot go into the pits unless you push them in. Like no, the physics of the game do not push them into the pits, so the player has to like manually push these tables across and down into the pits, and you don't get an achievement for one, so you have to keep doing it just as like, because you're weird, But as I was doing it, I was like, people are gonna fucking do this, and like, so I made us do an achievement for it, and like, it just was funny watching streamers like do it just kind of idly, like while they're like chatting to their audience, and then they get an achievement. I knew someone would do it, and they're like, oh my god. So yeah.
I am a weirdo. Yeah. Oh my god, dude. God, Dave, thanks so much for sitting down and talking video games with us for a little bit, man. I really appreciate it. Love your games. Just cannot wait to see what Dodge Roll pumps out next. Everybody out there, if you haven't played Enter the Gungeon or Exit the Gungeon, it's really hilarious sequel. Please go pick those up. They're available everywhere, right? Through Steam and just anywhere that sells video games.
Yeah, just Google it digitally. You probably, if you play video games, you probably have something that'll play it.
Just don't Bing it.
Yeah, don't Bing it. Who knows what'll happen.
Don't Bing it. Also, thanks so much, man.
Yeah, no worries. Have a good one.
Thanks so much for tuning into The Highway this week. A big shout out to Reverend Guitars, Railhammer Pickups, and Earthquaker Devices. If you liked what you heard, you can follow where you can follow, subscribe where you can subscribe, and if you want to go one step further, you can support us on Patreon at The Highway with Kyle Shutt. For a few bucks a month, you can help us keep this party going, get early access to next week's episode, and even get yourself a shout out.